am Amanda Eckhart. I am currently an animal care supervisor here at the Chattanooga Zoo.
And my name is Jake Cash, and I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications at Chattanooga Zoo.
Hello, I'm John Rossi. I'm a touring drummer with a passion for animal conservation. When I'm on the road, I spend as much time as possible visiting zoos, aquariums, and conservation organizations. Now, I want to share those places with you. I'll be talking to keepers, vets, conservationists, anyone who can help me in my mission of connecting my people to animals through their people. Join me on my Rossifari. Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to the Rossifari podcast. All right, y'all. So every once in a while, I like to dive into something that is going on kind of in the news world of zoos. And, well, one of the stories that we've talked about on Zoo News recently is the fact that the Chattanooga Zoo has a baby red panda there. And so I was pretty excited when I heard from Jake Cash, who does PR and marketing at the zoo. And he reached out and said, maybe, we could do something to talk about this. And I said, yes, we can. And so now we are releasing that episode to talk about that and the brand new exhibit area that is going to be opening up at the Chattanooga Zoo later this month. So you're going to get to hear from Jake and Amanda all about both of those things and some other cool fun stuff as well. As per usual, we go a little off topic every once in a while, but I think you're going to really enjoy this one. But before we get to that, a friendly reminder to make sure you're hitting subscribe so you don't miss any interview episodes or Zoo News episodes. Make sure that you are following along on the socials at Rossifari and on TikTok at Rossifari Pod. And if you'd like to support the podcast for as little as $3 a month, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Rossifari. So with all of that said, it is time. Here is my interview with Jake Cash and Amanda Eckhart of the Chattanooga Zoo, although we might be changing that name soon.
I am Amanda Eckhart. I am currently an animal care supervisor here at the Chattanooga Zoo. Formerly a keeper, though. I actually worked in our Asia section as the lead keeper there for about 4 years before moving into a supervisory role.
And my name is Jake Cash, and I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications at Chattanooga Zoo. This is my first job at a zoo at an AZA-accredited institution at all. And new to the industry, I just started last November, and I feel like I've learned a lot, have a lot to learn, and been having a lot of fun.
Nice. Very cool. I have to tell you right off the bat. So I'm a professional musician. That's what I do for a living. And I've spent an inordinate amount of time working on shows about and dealing with Johnny Cash. And I even know some of his family and stuff through all of that. And when I got an email from Jay Cash to Rossifari, it really threw me for a second. I was like, wait,
that's
what?
hilarious. Well, I am related to Johnny Cash. So.
Oh, really? Or are you just messing with me?
I'm just messing with you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're in the right place where, that whole area down there. So
I don't think I am. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I don't think so.
From what I've heard about Johnny and his exploits on the road, there are probably a lot of people related to Johnny Cash that, don't know for sure.
Wow.
Well, by the last name, though, that way.
That's true.
Yes, that's true. Well, immediately so off topic.
Welcome to my podcast. Yes,
yeah,
that's how we do.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So, and actually, I'm curious, Amanda, we'll get to you in a moment, but Jake, so since this is your first time, I find that a lot of times zoo people or zoo PR people come from like the PR world and that background and don't know much about zoos when they first get in there, which I always find fascinating. So what has that transition been like for you? And like when you got into your career overall, did you think like that someday you would be like, taking photographs of awesome animals and like meeting anteaters or whatever cool stuff you've gotten to do so far?
Yeah, that's a great question. After I graduated college, and I was a PR major, so I've studied it for a while, had some internships and things like that. I started working at a public relations firm. So that was great for me to get a lot of different experience with like entertainment, nonprofit, even politics, larger businesses, small businesses. So I had a pretty big range of experience across the gambit. And I was always very drawn specifically to the nonprofits. Did some stuff with like the Salvation Army and things like that I always just really enjoyed. So then after that, I worked for a credit union in their marketing department, which is also, a not-for-profit institution. But eventually I just started feeling like, I don't know if this is exactly the right fit for me. I've always been drawn to like the entertainment stuff, and I've always been a big animal person as well. So when the zoo job opened up in my area, I was like, oh my gosh, like I got to check that out. I got to do that. Ironically, sort of the credit union I worked for actually does a sponsorship with the zoo. So I already sort of had an in, which was super nice. So, and yeah, like you were saying, when I dove into the zoo world, you're right that I really didn't have a lot of like the knowledge about how the whole industry works and how the AZA works and how important the AZA is and how important accreditation is. And even to some degree, the real mission of the zoo as a conservation organization. So, and I kind of think that perspective has actually been a little bit helpful for me, just because I think I can see the zoo from an outside perspective pretty well, which is helpful in communications to think like, okay, like, we need to start from like the base level of like communicating like who we are and what we do. And we have to hit that message and like repeat that message of conservation and of education and of connection with wildlife, to say that like, yes, we are entertainment and we are a tourist attraction, and that's awesome and that's great. But hey, we're also like deeper than that. So me learning that, I think, has been really helpful for also the process of me communicating that. And people like Amanda and all the keepers and the leadership here have been wonderful to teach me so much and to share their knowledge with me. We have an amazing staff here. So it has been a great experience. I think has really deepened my personal love for like animals and conservation and all that too. And as far as marketing goes, like what's more fun to market than like a baby red panda or, what's more fun to throw out than that. So.
No, yeah, that's awesome. That's, my experience is the same. I was a musician who, as I toured the country, really loved going to zoos and started talking to keepers. And then when COVID hit, I started this podcast as something to keep me sane. Now I'm so, it's right. The start of my 5th year, and I'm so in love with it. And I've met hundreds of amazing animals, dozens and dozens of species. I'm doing conservation work with the AZA through Safe Red Panda and volunteering with Red Panda Network and other things. And it becomes your whole life, and it's amazing. But coming to it, like, yeah, my first episodes, I didn't know what accreditation was. I forget when I learned what the AZA was, but it was on the podcast, and now I'm on a steering committee of one of their safe programs. Like, it's just amazing, So yeah. It's cool that you have that perspective, and I'm especially excited because that's one thing that I think happens a lot. I'll be talking to people. I'll be in one of the private Facebook groups or something like that and talking to keepers, and I'll give the perspective of an outsider, even though I'm kind of an insider as well now. Or I'll talk about like my listeners and what they respond to, and people are shocked because when you're in the zoo world, there are just some things you take for granted that the public, would understand, and they don't. And I've loved being able to bring that perspective. And I love that you, coming from the outside, are also able to bring that perspective, All right. We'll be back after this quick break.
Hi, this is Kathy Hill from the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program. We're all about restoration projects in progress this season on One Lagoon, One Voice. Learn about the great strides the lagoon community is taking to restore and protect the Indian River Lagoon. Each week, we dive deep into discussions with scientists, resource managers, and nonprofit leaders to explore lagoon issues and solutions. From oyster reefs to clam restoration, algae blooms to muck, you'll learn all about the projects we're tackling to bring the Indian River Lagoon back to health. Click the link in the show notes to follow One Lagoon, One Voice, learn about the IRL Council, and explore our unique lagoon.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's something I've learned pretty early from people here, from other people in the AZA, is just like that just a huge part of it is communicating our mission, and a huge part of like the PR aspect of it too, showing people like why it's worth having us around. Like, what are we doing? So I think, that's a big part of it.
I think just to chime in too, one of the cool things about our zoo is we're kind of a smaller facility. So Jake is able to have a much closer relationship with the keepers, with the staff, with the animals. And I think that really helps with kind of bridging those communication things of what is a keeper's life like? what message do we want to say to the public, and kind of blending those things together. I think that's a good benefit of being a smaller size.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking as somebody who goes to all size facilities, it makes a huge difference. It really does. And I see that. And I think it's one of the things that is the hardest for larger zoos. They do amazing PR work. And in some cases they have, entire teams doing what Jake does. But yeah, that connection, and like the fact that, like I was talking to my friend Becca, who is the PR person at the Greensboro Science Center, another facility where I have a great relationship. And, she was, we were just talking today, right before this interview, and she sent me pictures that keepers had sent her just to cheer her up because her dog needs emergency surgery today. But then some of that stuff can go onto the web and can make a big deal. And she knows what's going on, and she has that relationship, and it makes a huge difference in the work that she's able to do, which is really special. Yeah.
Absolutely. So much of our content is literally just like stuff that people texted me, because the keepers, they're right there. Like for me, I have to like get up and I have to stop what I'm doing. I have to go and like the actual like opportunities for great content so often come from the keeper side, just an advantage of everyone having a cell phone, having a camera in their pocket and everything like that. Like with like the red panda baby, we just had like a lot of the footage of like Saffron, the mom, carrying Pilatus around and stuff like that was sent to me by like 2 specific keepers who have been keeping me in the loop. So yeah, I mean, that's a great point though. Like the relationships across the zoo, and especially being a smaller zoo, are like so important.
No, absolutely. And, now that you are an official like PR person at the zoo, because I've done episodes from Chattanooga before, but it's always just kind of been like keepers got permission from their bosses. There wasn't like, I was so excited when you reached out and told me you were doing this now, because I think every zoo needs, somebody who's in charge of that, who I can communicate with, and other people as well, but I don't care about them. I care about me. But, I'm really excited that your role exists now, and that you're doing it in the capacity that you're doing it in. I think that's really important. And I will be pitching later. We need to get together, and I need to convince y'all to officially change your name to Chattanooga. I mean, come on, it's right there.
People say that all. We have a magazine. We do a quarterly members magazine. That is Chattanooga magazine. I will send you some copies of that, John. I'm sure you would love to see that. I that's pretty funny. I like that.
Awesome. All right. So we have teased it. We have talked about it. But the main reason that we are here is that y'all have a baby red panda, and we all know I'm obsessed, and my listeners are obsessed. And so far in the U.S., there have not been a ton of panda births this summer, even compared to usual breeding seasons, which makes your little one stand out even more. So tell me everything. I'm not going to ask specific questions unless I need to, but just go. Tell me all the things.
Oh, wow. Where to begin? It's a question, really. Yeah. So we are super excited about little Pilatus. He was born to Avi and Saffron. Avi, his dad, is actually the last red panda that was born here at the Chattanooga Zoo, and that was 8 years ago. Wow. So this is a big deal for us. Avi had another breeding partner who is still here at the zoo. Her name is Willa, but they were never successful. So we had them as a breeding rec for several years, and they just weren't successful. So we brought Saffron in, and they were successful right away. So it's super, super exciting.
Do you happen to remember where Saffron came from?
She came from Idaho.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. Because I had the chance when I was down there before to meet Avi and Willa, and I tried to have a chat with Willa. I tried to explain that got to get it going, and it just I guess
right,
it yeah. Out, but yeah, I tried. I did my best, but it's cool that Saffron
Willa
came in.
is Carson's twin.
Right, I know. Yeah, that's so exciting.
Super cool. Yeah.
I also just love that everyone who's listening, everyone in the zoo world, everyone's just like, Carson. I'm like, yeah, of course. We all know Carson.
Yeah. Because I tell that to people a lot. I'm like, oh, yeah, Will is Carson's twin. And depending on who you're talking to, they're like, oh, my gosh, that's so cool. Or they're like, you're a nerd. I don't know what you're talking about. But if you're a panda nerd, you know who Carson is.
Oh, yeah. If you're a fanda, you know Carson. Yes, absolutely.
A fanda. Oh, yeah. Love that.
So, cool. So they were successful right away. Was it like a day one? Because I know introductions can always be a little tricky. Did it go well right from the start, or was there maybe a little bit of just your standard hurdle before we got to the successful mating bit?
Well, as you mentioned, red panda intros can sometimes be a little spicy. Willa actually was a key role in that because she is such a laid back panda. She's cool with anyone. So we actually introduced her to Saffron first because we knew that it would probably go a lot more smoothly than introducing Avi. And so we wanted Saffron to have a friendly face sooner rather than later. So we introduced the girls first, and that actually did go really well. Willa is so laid back. She doesn't put up a fight, So when they had their first little interactions and Saffron was a little like testy and maybe putting her paws up a little bit, Willa would just kind of look at her and okay, and walk away, and not feed into it, which is exactly what we wanted, so that went really well. So then we brought Avi into the picture and we did some intros with Avi and Saffron, and typical dude made it a little more difficult. We had a little bit more chasing, a little bit more tussling, but they settled in pretty quickly. It didn't take too long.
Nice. That's awesome. I love just that, I need to point it out. You introduced a panda to the wrong panda because you knew that panda's personality and you knew it would be the right choice. And I love that so much because, one of the things that I think gets lost a lot is that people at incredible zoos, Chattanooga is definitely one of them, really get to know the animals. And that is absolutely not what the playbook would say, overall is the best move. But because you knew the animal, it's not like they would say it was a bad thing. It was just not something I think that would normally be done. But because you knew the animals in your care, you were able to provide an easier transition, which is just like a beautiful story. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, it's really important because obviously the ultimate goal was for Saffron and Avi to get together and have babies. But more important than that also is just their general well-being, right? And so we want to take that into consideration. And so having Willa and knowing that she would be kind of a soft intro and would be someone who, if we had to intro and remove Avi multiple times, and kind of do it slowly, Saffron wouldn't be completely alone because coming from her previous facility, she had never been alone. She lived with her mom until she came here. So we didn't really want her to be alone for a long period of time because that was not normal for her. So kind of, what can we do that will get us to the end point, but in the gentlest way possible for everyone?
Yeah, I love that so much. I used to think that I was a really good interviewer because I would stumble on stories like that all the time. And I was like, whoa, that's so cool that I managed to find that little amazing story. And I've just come to realize that no, it's actually just that's what zookeepers do all the time. And it's such a common thing that I stumble on it, but that's stumbling on a grain of sand at the beach. Y'all are just really good at what you do. So.
Zookeepers are definitely not afraid to think outside the box. That's for sure. You have to.
Yeah, and you have to know your animals. It's amazing.
I was with one of our ambassador keepers this morning looking at, we have 6 Cape porcupines and they all look exactly the same to me. And his name's Sam, him being able to be like, oh no, this one's sensory quills are like a half-inch longer. I was like, I don't know how you keep all this straight. We do have an amazing keeper staff for sure.
Yeah, I've been volunteering at Aquarium of Niagara with the pinnipeds and penguins for the last, 6 months now. And I cannot tell our California sea lions apart unless they're all right next to each other. Then I can usually figure it out. But the actual people, the trainers that work with them every day, just glance in and are like, oh, hi, Ari, hi, Copper. And I'm like, they're all brown. They look exactly alike.
Right.
One is the daughter of another one. They look so much alike. It's all just how do you do this? But yeah, it is quite amazing to me.
Yeah. And that's part of telling the story too and connecting with people on an emotional level is really seeing these animals as the unique individuals that they are. I mean, I think that it does well on social media, and whenever we're talking to the news media, they love being able to identify the different animals like that, and just kind of showing the fullness of what they are. I think is important. But
yeah, one of my little crusades that I try to do is there are certain amazing, again, AZA accredited facilities that there are a few that won't do animal names at all, but that's pretty rare. But more and more now, I've seen a few that'll do they'll put the names in quotation marks, and I get what they're going for. And I've talked to some of the PR people about it. Some have changed, some have not. And, that's fine. But to me, you know, it takes away from the ability to connect. And, you know, especially with animals that do recognize their names, even if the concept of a name is a little bit of anthropomorphism, they do recognize their names. They will be called to their name or whatever. Then, like, come on, like, you know, let it go. It's, to me, it always makes it seem, when you do the quotation mark thing, it always makes it seem a little almost sarcastic or like silly, but it's not. And that helps people connect. People love Carson. Carson dropped single name, you know, it's the Beyonce of the panda world. And we know who everyone's talking about, right? And so,
people love Fiona the hippo.
Yeah, of course.
We had Hank the chimp here for a long time.
Now, to play to the other side of that, as zookeeper and me, sometimes that can be problematic when you do have animals who know and identify their names very well. I have worked at other facilities where we had a public name and like their real name, because you don't necessarily want the public to be able to come up to an exhibit and call their name and interrupt them, call them over when they should be doing something else. And so sometimes, like, yes, I get the personal connection, but also it can be a little bit troublesome, particularly with very intelligent animals. Our elephants at a different facility is a good example of that, where they had a public name that we used when talking to the public, but that wasn't really the name that we used when training them and actually working with them.
Yep, which I think is a perfectly serviceable way to handle that problem in that situation. I think that's great. Yeah. I do, you know, also debate sometimes, you know, facilities will get an animal from another facility and change the name because they get a $10,000 donation or whatever to change the name. But then all the people who loved that animal get really upset about it. And I know some stories about that from my listeners in particular, where people got big mad about certain, it was pandas in both cases, but, you know, again, pandas are a lot, but it really, you know, there's a lot of nuance to all of what happens in this industry, which I think makes a lot of sense. But I do think that creating connection is such an important part of what we do, that for the vast majority of animals, it helps.
Yeah. And that's where, like, the connection, I think, makes sense to hold on to that name, because then you hold on to that connection with a group of people who maybe aren't as close anymore. If their animal moved to a different facility, you know, like, you're still going to follow them because you're connected to them. And if that animal suddenly has a new name, you don't know who they are anymore. You lose that connection, you know. And even though we do want to connect with our local public, we also want to connect on a broader scale. So sometimes holding that name to hold that connection, you know, God forbid Fiona were to move, you know what I mean? Then, or Carson or Timothy, any of these big names that we know, you know, and they change. Imagine Fiona moving and changing her to something else, versus if you keep it and then you're just building on that connection with all of her fans that she already has.
Yep. One of my favorite stories, and then we will move on from this and back to your stuff. But one of my favorite stories on this topic is, I don't want to say what zoo it was because I don't like throwing, you know, facilities under the bus, but they changed the name of a well-known panda. And when the panda had moved, people at the zoo, not like zoo staff or volunteers, but just like, you know, members and stuff, had actually started setting up multiple bus trips to go visit their panda. And when the names changed, they canceled it. And it was multiple trips. And yeah, they were heartbroken. Like, they felt personally offended by this zoo's decision. And I'm sure the zoo made a lot of money, and I'm sure that, you know, they weren't thinking about people tricky. There. It is. Like, again, there's so much nuance to all of what happens.
Because you need that money to keep the lights on and feed the animals and, you know, build the new exhibits and do all the things you want to do. So like, I can see both sides.
Yeah, it is. It is a really interesting conversation, but I love being able to chat about it. So yeah, it's always interesting, but enough philosophy. Back to the baby panda. Tell me again, okay. So we know that mom got there and it was very successful right away. Yeah. And then that usually, you know, success usually leads to the tiny little panda popping out. So were y'all able to know that it was coming in advance? And
yes,
what
we
was
did.
The birth
so
like? Tell me all the things.
the keepers started noticing behavioral changes, and they do what we call a tactile behavior, touching her, and they were noticing some changes in her nipple development. So they called in vet staff, and she was already doing really well with her training to go into our x-ray crate. So we have a crate that has one side that's just plexi, so you can shoot x-ray through it. And so we were able to, because she wasn't here long enough to ultrasound train. That's a little more complicated, but we were able to get her into the crate and do x-rays and confirm that she was in fact pregnant. So we were able to plan ahead. We had a nest box built for her and we had a sneaking suspicion of exactly where we thought she was going to want to go, because she's kind of habitual in her ways. So we put the nest box where we thought she was going to want it, set up a den camera in that nest box so that we could observe. And sure enough, we were able to observe the birth live on camera. It was super fun because it happened, as most births do, after hours. So keepers were all like in big text chains and chatting. We were all watching it live, like, oh my gosh, I think it's happening. Oh, was that a foot? Is that a head? What do I see? Because you're watching on this like pixelated, den camera, and just like everybody just texting back and forth and super excited. It was really fun.
That's awesome. And how has the parenting been going? I know, it can go all over the place, from they don't need help to moms look at the pandas and say, lol, and then the keepers have to raise it. Now, I know that's not the case here, because y'all have gotten some great content with Saffron being adorable. Yeah,
and red pandas can go either way. We hand rear a lot of red pandas in this industry, but Saffron has been an excellent mom for a first-time mom. We did not separate Avi completely from them. We have been letting him into the exhibit with her. That's sort of, I don't know if it's the new way, but you don't necessarily have to separate dad anymore. So we trust Saffron to set those boundaries, and she's a good mom with that, although it's gotten very, very hot. And so she decided to have her baby in a space adjacent to our outdoor exhibit. So there's limited air conditioning out there. So we did eventually have to move Avi inside so that he could have access to some cooler space, because Saffron and Pilatus were occupying the main air-conditioned space outside. But she's done great. We didn't do the first wellness check until about a week and a half after he was born. We let them just have that first time, just monitoring. If we had seen anything on camera, we would have, of course, intervened sooner. But we were seeing all the right things, all the grooming, the amount of time she was spending with him. She has done an amazing job.
That makes me really happy. I love that so much, especially with first-time moms, because they usually suck. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Like, this is why first children in large families of humans are often the least well-adjusted, or the most well-adjusted, because they did it on their own. But I say that as an only child.
Can relate.
See, yep. So, no, that's amazing to hear. So y'all got a lot of really good content. I've seen some pics and stuff of like Saffron walking and like holding the cub and like moving it around, which is something you don't get to see a lot, and is really amazing. So I'm kind of curious, has that been good, like from an educational standpoint, and also just like, is that stuff taking off on socials? Do people get excited seeing that?
Yes, I can answer definitely the second part of that question first there. I would say the initial post of Pilatus, I believe I'm correct in saying, is our most successful Instagram post of all time. Nice. For Chattanooga Zoo. We got over 100,000 likes. And last I checked, it was like, I think 1,400,000 impressions. And then another local news source here called Nouga Today, as in Chattanooga. They posted the same pictures and got over 400,000 likes. And I asked them to send me the back end analytics, and the reach was like 6 million. So it's been really fun seeing people get really excited about that. I remember seeing you reposted our video that we had one of our keepers do, reading some of the funny comments and stuff like that. And we've had people come out to the enclosure with like cameras and stuff and stand there all day waiting to see if Saffron will bring Pilatus out. And of course, that's very hit or miss, just depending on the temperature and also just like what she wants to do. And I understand it's a pretty normal behavior for her to move the cub around some, move from space to space like they would in the wild as well. But to answer your question, yes, the content has been a lot of fun to make, and it has done very well. We've done some earned media with the news around that as well. We actually were able to have one of the local news stations come out for the most recent vet visit we did about a week ago, and we did like a interview with that news personality and our veterinarian who's holding Pilatus. And then at the very end of that, Pilatus was like, "Okay, I'm ready to go. Yeah, we're done."
So, one thing that I find very interesting about all of this is that you keep mentioning a name. And it's not super common to just have a new panda drop and have it named already. And so I'm curious. I know you talked about this on the socials a little, but I want my listeners to know where the name came from. I think it's very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Pilatus is definitely a unique name. So where that originated from is there is a local TV and radio personality in Chattanooga. His name's James Howard. He's on Channel 9 and Sunny 92.3. He's been in the media for a long time in our area, but in his spare time, he is also a pilot. He flies planes and hot air balloons too. So he's basically the coolest guy in the world. I love him. James is great. And he volunteered his time, and he worked with a local company called Crystal Air to go to Idaho Falls. And I believe this was last September, retrieve Saffron from that zoo and then bring Saffron to her new home with us. So that was really important just because of the weather and the temperatures at that time. It would have made it unsafe and unrealistic to fly Saffron like in cargo, like in commercial. So we had to have that specific private transport to be able to get Saffron here in time for breeding season. So it is completely accurate to say without James Howard, the radio and TV guy, and without Crystal Air, we would not have Pilatus because we would have missed breeding season. So then when Pilatus was born and determined to be healthy and everything, and it was all good, we decided that it would be best to extend the naming opportunity to James as a way to thank him. So Pilatus is actually the model of aircraft with which he flew Saffron to us. So that's how he came up with that name.
I really, really like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's a good story that goes along with it. But we just wanted to give him that opportunity to express our appreciation for that.
I think that kind of thing is always so special when you can, again, I get selling off or auctioning off naming rights, and I think it's cool and it makes a lot of sense sometimes. But when you allow keepers or other people that were involved in some way, in this case, the pilot, to have that moment, it's really special. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been able to work with him some too, just because he is, in the local media and stuff to create some cool content and do some stuff for their news channel. We had him and him alone and his team come in to our most recent vet visit and do sort of like an exclusive interview with our veterinarian. So that was a really fun opportunity, and just some people love behind the scenes stuff, to just like help get the word out there and show everything that we're doing. So that's been a lot of fun. I think it's been a really cool experience for everyone. Because like Amanda said, this is our first Red Panda Cup in 8 years. So it's been a high energy around here. Everyone's been really excited.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And I can speak as somebody who has done that at other facilities, been like the guy allowed to come and do things. Even last year again at Greensboro, they had cubs and I got to be a huge part of, I was down there every month documenting and behind the scenes and holding the cubs and everything.
That's awesome. It
was life-changing for me, as well as, being able to provide that content. It's a very, very cool experience. But again, you have to know that you have someone that you can trust and that really cares. So it's awesome that this guy gets to do that because y'all can trust him. I think that's so important to have and so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's definitely a good friend of the zoo for that reason. And we have a great partnership with him just on like a working standpoint, a publicity standpoint as well. So I think it was a no-brainer to really keep him involved and express our appreciation through that opportunity.
Yeah, I love that. And, we've talked a lot about Pilatus here, but that's not the only thing that we are excited to chat about, because y'all are actually opening a new area of the zoo soon.
Yes.
Very soon.
Yeah, very soon.
When is this happening and what is
August
it?
31st is the official open date for the Cape of Africa. It is our single biggest expansion ever at $3.9 million. So definitely a big moment for Chattanooga Zoo and a big moment for Chattanooga as well. We're bringing, for the first time ever, warthogs. And in fact, our male warthog, Everett, will be arriving tomorrow morning. So very excited about that. And then we're also bringing Cape porcupines and servals to Chattanooga Zoo. So the expansion itself looks really good. It's a really like fun, immersive, I think like authentic experience that incorporates a lot of like classic African imagery and textures and colors and sounds and iconography. There's like a stream that goes through the whole thing with a couple of waterfalls. So you get to hear the water the whole time. And I just think it's very immersive. We have a great exhibit design team here as well. And they're making like trees for the servals to jump around in. And the warthog yard looks great and has a lot of different like space and areas for them, like with water, and where they'll be able to like cool off and stuff like that. So it's we're really excited to open that up and to share that with everybody. It's crazy. It's almost here. We started construction last September, so it's been going for just shy of a year. And this kind of concludes like a big part of the zoo's like master expansion plan. We had our phase 1 of our African expansion that came to fruition in 2021 when we first brought giraffes to the zoo, which was a huge deal, of course. We're getting a bigger yard as part of the Cape of Africa expansion too. So this is kind of seeing a lot of long-term plans come to fruition with our biggest expansion ever. So yeah, it's a big moment for the Chattanooga Zoo, and everyone is definitely really excited.
Nice. Very cool. Although I still think it should be Chattanooga. But anyway.
Fair enough.
So, Amanda, what goes into figuring out the, like what types of animals are coming in and how you're going to care for them? And what do you and your team have to do to figure out, what's going to be happening when you bring in multiple new animals all at once?
Yeah, so it's a very long planning process. Technically, the porcupines and the servals are already here. They have been ambassadors at our zoo for quite a while. So this will just be creating actual exhibit space for them. They currently live behind the scenes in our ambassador animal area. So they are here. And as soon as their exhibits are done, they'll be starting to get introduced to their new enclosures, which will be really exciting. But the planning process, it takes a very long time. That's actually a little bit above me. I'm not really involved in those initial planning stages, so I can't speak, fully to what goes on. But a lot of different things taken into consideration. In this instance, we decided most all of our zoo areas are very specific in geography. So for this is Cape of Africa. So looking at specifically Cape species was the goal, and what can fit in what space that we do have. We are a zoo that is located in an interior of a city. So we have a limited footprint for what we can work with. And so trying to maximize that space in the best way possible for species that will work best in those areas is all part of that planning process.
All right, we'll be back after this quick break.
What if I told you scientists discovered 100 new species in the deep ocean?
Why did crocodiles survive extinction?
Megalodon. How did it go extinct? Hey, it's me, Forrest Galante, wildlife biologist. You might know me from Joe Rogan's podcast or my various TV shows like Extinct or Alive and Shark Week. Join me and my friends as we dive into the wild world of animal anomalies and everything wildlife. Don't miss out. Click here to uncover these mind-blowing animal mysteries.
Very cool. And then with it going from ambassador to exhibit animals for those two species, are they going to have some of the same care team, or are there new people learning how to take care of these animals? And if so, how did you navigate all of that?
A little bit of both. So basically what we did was we added a new ambassador animal keeper position. So their current keepers will still continue their care, as well as adding another person onto that team to help with the workload, because they're going to have new exhibits, new den spaces, new buildings. So the workload has increased. So a little bit of both.
And I believe our giraffe keepers, our hoofstock keepers, are taking care of the warthogs,
yes,
as well. So they take care of our Highland cow, blue dikers, giraffes, and now warthogs as well, which I understand they're pretty excited to add that to their repertoire as well.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. Warthogs are awesome. They have to be one of the more underrated animals like in the zoo world. They're very cool.
They are very cool. And that kind of brings up another thing, talking just in general about the zoos and things. One thing that was really cool is in preparation for our warthogs to get here, we were actually able to send our keepers to Zoo Atlanta, who currently houses warthogs, to work with their keepers, learn from their keepers, get some ideas for enrichment and different things like that, see some of their training and all of that kind of stuff. So it's really cool to be a part of a community who works together to kind of help and learn all the things that we need to learn, because that is a brand new species to us.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I always love hearing collaborative stories like that. Speaking of which, is your zoo going to be sending anyone to AAZA or AAZV this year?
Yeah, a few people are going to be going to Calgary for the conference just in like a month, I think. And we were up for reaccreditation as well. We did our inspection recently. I guess I can't say too much, but it seems like everything went very well. So of course we're going there for the hearing. So a few different folks are going to that. Yeah. And the mid-year was in Memphis, which of course is relatively close to, it's still 6 hours. Tennessee's a very long, narrow state. But we sent a few folks to that as well. So always a good time. Always very glad to participate in those.
Nice. Yeah, I always love this. Will be my third year doing the AZA conference and my second year doing AAZV, which is the Zoo Vets conference. And they're back to back. So it's 2 weeks of literal, like at the end of those 2 weeks, I am passed out. But,
I bet.
It's
so
a lot of fun.
Social interaction.
So much and so many interviews and so much butt kissing of the facilities I haven't gotten on here yet. And just all of it.
That's hilarious. Yeah, it's called networking actually, but butt kissing's good too.
I'm sticking with what I said. No, that's very cool. So is there anything else that y'all wanted to share about anything going on at Chattanooga right now?
Chattanooga. You're voicing it. It's going to happen.
Yeah. You can keep saying it enough. It'll be
it'll eventually happen. Yeah, well, I mean, it's definitely just a super exciting time for the Chattanooga Zoo all the way around. Between the red panda baby, Cape of Africa, literally moments before we recorded this podcast, we brought in our new frog species, our Panamanian golden frogs.
Ooh, nice.
So we have some great new exhibits on our South America area for some different reptiles and amphibians in there. So we're definitely super, super excited to have. I mean, it's such a cool species. It's so sad that they're essentially extinct in the wild, but also an honor to get to participate in programs like that to try to like bolster that and to let people see something so rare. Alongside
of building this massive, amazing new expansion, we have an in-house team who does really great work with updating current exhibits and things like that. So we have a lot of our smaller enclosures that have been updated. Adding that Panamanian golden frog is really cool. One thing that I just think is very cool about this zoo in particular is our herp collection is amazing.
Yes.
Really, really cool. The Hellbender Head Start program is super awesome to get to participate in. So we have a lot of, while Cape of Africa is very exciting, there are also a lot of other really cool smaller things happening all throughout the zoo.
And speaking of smaller things at the zoo, there's one animal that I have to ask for an update on. Whenever I think of the Chattanooga Zoo, I think of fennec foxes. And there's a very specific reason why, which is before Rossifari was a thing, I visited the Chattanooga Zoo and I met one of your fennec fox keepers. And I mentioned how much I loved them and I thought they were cool animals. And she was just like, you want to meet one? You seem like you really like the animals. And I was like, I do. And so I got to go and meet a fennec fox and it meant the world to me. It was just an incredible moment. Such a gift to be given. And honestly, experiences like that are one of the reasons I was inspired to start this podcast, by just incredible keepers like that. So yay that. But now because of that, I will always associate Chattanooga with fennec foxes. So what is your current fennec fox situation?
So you are actually not the only person who has a strong association with Chattanooga and
it's
happening. They are a little bit of a key species for us. We love having fennec foxes here. Unfortunately, currently we are down to a single fennec fox at the moment, a dandelion, but we have a recommendation from the SSP for some more fennec foxes that are going to be joining us hopefully in the next 6 months or so. So we are very excited to be adding more back to our facility. We have a long history of fennec foxes here. We have grown ours until they reach very old age. And so that has been really exciting. And we're looking forward to adding some new young fennec foxes to our growing family here.
Nice. I love that. I love when a facility just gets associated with an animal. Like, it almost seems to happen naturally. Like, it's just a good fit and the people there are doing a great job. And then it's just like, everyone's like, oh yeah, Chattanooga, fennec foxes, obviously. And you're like, okay. Yeah. It's always a good time. Cool. Are there any conservation organizations that y'all would like to give a shout out to?
So, I mean, obviously Red Panda Network. We've been talking about Red Pandas this whole time, so I'm going to plug them for sure. And as a former Asia keeper, we did a lot of work with Snow Leopard Trust. Absolutely love them. They're a great partner organization with us at the Chattanooga Zoo. We work with them quite a bit on different things. So those would be my two top.
Very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we're joining the Red Panda Safe, like we were talking about, and the Snow Leopard Safe as well.
All of the safes.
Yeah.
All of the safes.
So
yes.
I know that's a little outside of what you asked, but yeah.
No,
absolutely.
I love that. Please keep plugging. Please keep plugging. We want people to know that we exist. So it's a good thing. It's time now, don't you know? We've come to the end of the show. But there's one tale left to go. You're gonna laugh and say, oh no. It's time for the Rossifari poop story.
So let's tell a panda poop story.
Poop story.
Since we're talking about pandas. We recently participated in a study where they were looking at panda feces and studying it for microbiome and different things like that. So we had to collect panda poop samples for like the past 6 months. So when you have 3 adult red pandas all living together, how do you know whose poop is whose, right? So we started feeding our pandas on the day before poop collection day. Everyone would get a glitter grape in a different color.
Nice.
So Saffron was pink, Avi was green, and Willow was blue. And so then it was easy to go through and identify and collect all of your glitter poops to send off for scientific research that is actually very important, but it sounds very silly.
That's amazing. Glitter poop makes me very happy. I've actually had that a couple times after some nights at the club, but that's a different story in time.
Totally different. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I've really appreciated it.
Absolutely. This is a lot of fun. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you, John.
That was such a fun time. I really enjoyed that. And I'd like to say thank you to Jake for setting it all up and, to Jake and Amanda for being on and being awesome. I'm really excited about this little cub at the Chattanooga Zoo, and I'm sure that you are not surprised by that fact. But I'm hoping I can get there and see it before it gets too big. Chat is kind of out of the way of most of the things I have going on right now, but we're gonna give it a shot. No promises, but we're gonna give it a shot to try and go get some content down there because oh my goodness, Pilatus is just adorable. Love him so much. But anyway, enough about that. I want to take a moment to say thank you to my Red Panda level patrons, Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, Jenny Owens, and Kevin Williams. And honestly, y'all, I'll be back here on Friday with the Zoo News. But until then, keep in mind that the word credits backwards is Steiderk. The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.